line in Upright, Sarah, where Noni Hazelhurst calls me ugly Keith Urban.
I think we all have an understanding that fame is not good for you.
Warm champagne next to a disgustingly over blue cheese salad.
In fact, I am absolutely convinced it's not good for you and the people around you.
Sarah, do you want this?
You're scared me in front.
Yeah, well, I'm here to keep you adrenalised.
The problem with being famous yourself is it takes your internal camera, which is a thing that should look outwards, and it does this, and you can't stop it. And it's terrible for you.
Ah, smiling. Yeah.
It's all about me, and the audience is laughing at me, and they love me, and it's me, and it screws with your ego, and this is what makes stars into wankers, you know, you can't help it.
Yes. Ah, fuck yeah. Excuse the language, but fuck yeah.
Learning to manage jealousy is kind of interesting when you've got a partner who's, has had some interest over the years. How do I say that? It seems weird, right?
Well, also, I'm away a lot, and I'm in a really flamboyant industry, and I'm really flirtatious, and I really like women.
But I knew that. That's all part of what I had to figure out, that was what he was going to be, and there was going to be no changing that.
London, please make him so welcome, the incredible Tim Minchin!
I understood quite early that my career is a sort of kite, and I've flown it cautiously in a way that has allowed me to have unbelievable grand adventures and amazing fun times and parties.
Feels really good.
Shaking, beautiful, crying girls who can't believe they're touching me and all that nonsense, whilst keeping my marriage and giving my kids a feeling of safety. Loving affirmation is like loving chocolate. You just need to have a square every now and then have a good think about whether you should be on your greens.
For Tim, as a satirist, it's really about trying to kind of even out the playing field, hold everyone to account. He used to punch up, but now it's harder. The dynamics don't work anymore, right? The more high profile you become, the less targets there are because you just become a bully. And I think he's changed his attitude a lot recently.
In our modern free-spoken society, there is a word that we still hold taboo.
I am a straight white dude with a huge microphone, speaking in a time that is at the end of hundreds of years of straight white dudes with microphones, imposing their knowledge, their condescension, their unchecked privilege, their patriarchal blah blah.
Only a ginger can call another ginger ginger. Only a ginger can call another ginger ginger.
But I do not believe that my straight white maleness means that I have nothing to contribute on a whole variety of subjects if I have thought deeply about them.
Come home, Cardinal Pell, come down from your citadel. It's just the right thing to do. You have a right to know what you knew.
But I am on the end of that line, and I am, of course, an inheritor of that. So it is not so bad that people like me feel like we need to shut the f*** up for a little bit.
You only need to pray in a particular spot to a particular version of a particular god. And if you pull that off without a hitch, he will fix one eye of one middle-class white bitch.
He probably doesn't perform some of those songs anymore because the world has changed and he has changed and he's not a 30-year-old dude anymore, you know.
I'm one of 4 kids and my parents are still together.
We grew up in Perth. It was a very warm and loving home. Tim was very much the middle child of the older 3.
My dad's a surgeon. He's very hardworking, pretty modest, not interested in money, second-hand cars and camping trips, but very good schools and stability.
We're all quite musical. that was a big part of our life. Piano, I think, was a way for him to process things.
I was always drawn to the piano, mostly because I didn't like studying. And so I sort of figured out what chords were, and I learned a bit of guitar, and I just worked it out. I mean, it's not actually that hard, really. I didn't think one day I'm going to be a star. It just wasn't in my culture. It's not how we were brought up.
Tim and I first met at a youth theatre company, and Tim was a shining star. He was quite incredible. He was magnetic.
I mean, I was just a kid doing amateur theatre, and I just really loved doing it. And I suppose to the extent that I now have the career I have, I was learning everything I needed to know. The overarching relationship of my adult life is Sarah.
Well, I think the first time we both remember each other is when you came to my house that time.
For a party.
My parents were away, had some people around.
And then we turned up to first day of our arts degrees, and we realised we had a lot of the same subjects, so we just started sitting together. And yeah, we got together in the middle of 1993.
He's quite silly and funny. I mean, he's just funny. He was always in it for the gag. He was always noodling away on the piano. He wrote very passionate, sort of romantic-y stuff early on, and it was lovely.
So half the songs were about you, so that was...
I know, it was great. And then they weren't. And then there were angry songs about me when I dumped you on you.
Yeah, that's right.
We'd been together from when we were 17, and he was a lot. And I was kind of trying to figure out how I would fit and if I would fit. And I thought I just need some time to figure that out.
She broke up with me for the same reason that she still has trouble. I swallowed her because she's a quiet person and a thoughtful person, and I had all these actor friends and everything was huge.
I was working with Tim during the Great Separation. And yes, he was lost without Sarah during that time. He was heartbroken.
It was awful. That was proper first heartbreak. A lot of lying on my bed looking at the ceiling. And so I recovered by falling in love with someone else. And Sarah, by then, had realised she didn't like me being in love with someone else. So she was very proximate when things started collapsing. That 2 years break and the experience of me having another partner and you having your whatever you were doing. That sounded like I was being awkward. I just got something
Me
in my
having
throat.
my partner and you
fucking
whoever you wanted
to. But I actually think the breakup can be the seed of a bunch of bitterness and crap in the future if you get back together. I think in hindsight, we did quite well. When you're an arty type growing up in Perth, you know the main thing in your head is, when do I leave?
Tim Minchin has been writing music since he was a teenager. Approaching 26, he's just made his first CD and in 2 weeks hopes to be knocking on the doors of record companies in the eastern states.
Ultimately, I'd like to write for my living, and I guess this album is a showcase of all different writing styles that I'm capable of.
I mean, moving to Melbourne was really tough for Tim. He'd come from a place where he had somewhat of a profile to a much bigger pool in Melbourne where nobody knew him and he knew no one. It was really difficult to break through.
And I auditioned for things and tried to get an agent and got rejected by pretty much every agent in Australia. So I was playing piano for cabaret artists, and I'd done this big tour with Todd McKenney, the boy from Oz, where I played and sang with him.
Please welcome my music director, Mr. Tim Minchin. He only learned to play the piano today, so we're hoping it goes okay.
I played piano for Eddie Perfect, and I really remember thinking, I'm just not as good as him, so I better get writing.
He was very, very good at a lot of different things, but every path had sort of petered out because he was never really just sort of one definable thing.
He started to create his own work and his own cabaret acts. And, you know, sometime there was 10 of us in the audience, but he was coming up with brilliant material.
This show's about me, baby.
When Tim started doing his, you know, solo stuff, like all of us, it was hard to get traction, you know. He did a show called, I want to say like Naval, or does that make sense?
And it was called Naval Cerebral Melodies with Umbilical Chords.
Yes, that was it's a good title. Why the fuck didn't anyone go to that?
And we were trying to figure out whether we could afford to have a baby, and we were sort of, we could always pay the rent because you had a day job, but it was, a bit rice and gravy sometimes.
Well, Sarah was a huge support during the Melbourne years. I mean, she was working full-time as a social worker.
I'm paying for everything. We've got a stack of bills over there, which I have to work my way through at the moment, and I can't conceive of how we're going to pay all this stuff when I'm not working.
It was just so frustrating just seeing what was the most exciting act in town, as far as we were concerned, and nobody was taking any notice.
Yeah, you could be clever as Voltaire, but it won't get you nowhere if you want to sell discs.
Tim said, I'm going to give it one more year. Going to give it one last shot, and then I'm going to get a job teaching piano or something. And that's when I started to film him, because I just thought, well, whatever happens in that year, it's got to be interesting.
Toby Schmitz, this dear friend of mine, and Travis Cotton, another dear friend of mine, wanted me to write songs for a musical that they were doing at the Old Fitz in Sydney.
He's like, yeah, what's the fiscal upside? And it was like about $100, and we'll get you a mattress to sleep on. What else are you doing?
And it sort of changed my life. And in that period, my curly hair was getting big and curly, and I decided to straighten it, and I decided to lose a bunch of weight.
I'm so bored of fucking actors and their self-indulgent bleating. I have to change keys every second verse just to keep myself from sleeping.
So for a show in early 2005 was the first time I did the eye makeup and played on a grand piano. And I went, from now on, I'm this guy, and it's grand pianos. And then a month later, it's Melbourne Comedy Festival, and that's when things started to change.
He knew that he needed to look interesting, in his words. It was theatrics. And, that was all very, very deliberate.
He will always be a rock and roll nerd.
So for Melbourne Comedy Festival 2005, Tim created the Dark Side show.
But you see, the problem is he always dreamt of being a star, but he learned piano instead of guitar.
And the idea behind that show was to put everything that Tim could possibly do into this one act.
So if you don't eat pigs and we don't eat pigs, why not eat pigs together?
And Tim created the character in that show. So this crazy-haired, wild, chaotic, rock star-looking guy with the self-deprecating, downbeat persona was just incredibly endearing to audiences, and they fell for him.
Straighten my hair, start calling it comedy. That's the key, if anyone's wondering.
He was the talk of the festival, and from that, he was invited to take the same show to Edinburgh, the biggest comedy festival in the world.
Hello, welcome to my show.
Tim went in there as an absolute nobody. I mean, however was he going to get noticed?
We're gonna have some fun.
And it came down to him breaking through very early with a really great review.
He plays like an angel, sings like a rock star he always wanted to be, and has a devil of a sense of humour. Fantastic.
Is that right?
What happened for Tim at that festival was sort of unprecedented for someone to make that big an impression so quickly and, kind of like conquer that festival in the way he did.
So to top off the Edinburgh Festival, having won the Best Newcomer Award, which was a massive deal, he was then invited to perform at a massive charity gig at the Royal Albert Hall in London to, 5,000 people.
Mariah Carey was waiting to come on after me, and I walked out and I looked up and I remember my brain going, fuck yeah. And it could have gone, oh, fuck. And I'm sort of proud of old me because I don't know why. It just went, yeah, I can do this. This is going to be awesome. They're going to love this.
Your love for me is not debatable. Your sexual appetite's insatiable. You never ever make me waitable. Delectable, inflatable you.
He went from nobody to suddenly people recognising him on the street. It was an incredible thing to witness, and they moved to London straight after that.
Setting up a family, you know, and a life in London was great. It's pretty easy to be married to someone who's just living their dream, you know.
My first tour was 500 seaters, and then there were bigger rooms, and it wasn't long before we were talking about orchestras and arenas.
Nothing ruins comedy like big arenas. But your enjoyment is not as important as my self-esteem is. My ego's the only thing you can see clearly from the back, but I'm quite famous now.
It happens very, very rarely to go from absolute zero to, you know, getting the best agent and the DVD deals and all the stuff that happened to me.
Well, obviously with the trappings of fame, he gets attention from everywhere now. I mean, including women he used to have on his bedroom wall as a kid. I kid you not. And of course it's tempting.
When I got known, people who would have otherwise been disinterested in me were interested in me, and it's very intoxicating. And you're away from home for a long time, and you're jet-lagged, and you're drinking. I don't know, I think the times I got close to doing the wrong thing made me realise that it wouldn't be worth it to blow my marriage up.
I'll take lonely tonight.
I'll take Lonely.
Yeah, you came round to Lonely.
Oh, well, yeah.
No,
I joke about that song, but I feel like it is the perfect Tim song.
So though I am hungry and tempted, I'm sorry I'm not gonna buy.
That is a song about my darling husband, like, not cheating on me. Congratulations. Well done, Tim.
Oh, I know regret in the making.
But I make a joke of that he shouldn't be praised for everything, including not cheating on me.
That's right.
Like, it's so
I had a couple
hard.
of reactions when that song came out from women, just like, what do you want? A frickin' medal? Like, really angry women. And I'm like, no, I don't want anything. I'm just writing a song.
Yeah.
It's just an experience that I haven't heard reflected in a song.
It's a
and that's
story.
my job, is to write about experiences that are common in a way that people might not have thought about. This is my first piano I ever bought. I didn't get a piano till I was 30-ish, and we'd moved to England. After I quit piano, when I did grade 3 piano or whatever it was, on my very last lesson, my piano teacher said, oh, well, you should probably know before you go that when you harmonise a C major scale, it sounds like that. So this is a C major, it's a D minor, E minor, F major, G, A minor, B minor, flat 5, C. And she went, so that's kind of how chords work. Bye. And I went, okay. And I've got okay at it over time. And for a hell of a lot of my audiences, that seems like magic. It seems sort of impossibly complicated. For all my musician friends, they'll just be going, you're a hack, Minchin, which I'm very comfortable with.
He refined it to the point where now it is one of the most extraordinary things to have someone be able to give the vocal performance that he does, the beat poetry performance he does, at the same time completely independently siloing his brain into being able to play like extraordinarily complex jazz accompaniment.
And I'm not having you on. I reckon one day you could play piano as good as Elton John.
What was happening? I was going to be a star, you know. I was on all the telly and I was being invited to things and I was winning awards and I was just on the up. And then Matilda came along and I nearly said no.
Well, that offer for the Matilda job came in and around hundreds of other offers. And I do remember saying, this is the one. Do some work on that one.
It's kind of like, oh, imagine if it becomes a musical, that'd be amazing. And so I was like, wow, hope he does it. Hope he doesn't blow it, yeah.
And suddenly here I was trying to figure out what a 6-year-old girl would say just before magic happened out of her eyes, and arguing with this extraordinary playwright and hearing advice from this brilliant director and having an orchestrator going, we could do this. And I was just like, oh, that's collaboration, that's art. And we're making something that's bigger than me and bigger than an opinion that might change soon and bigger than a tit joke.
And he got in and he just wrote the shit out of that show. He got picked up and brought to Broadway, and it certainly put him on the map as an extraordinary composer of musicals.
Sometimes you have to be a little bit naughty. Matilda, I think, was a dream come true. But where do you go from there? It's really, you then have to go even better, you know, to feel that same level of success.
I had done a deal with DreamWorks in the US, and this guy called Harry Cripps had written this script, outback rollicking adventure. And I agreed to come on board and write some songs. And then at some point, they started suggesting that I should move to LA and help direct this movie. And so I decided I'm going to be an animated film director now.
Larrikins got to the point where it was completely storyboarded, the whole score was written, some parts of it had been expanded and animated, that had several readings, had cast this incredible cast.
And we had Hugh Jackman and Jackie Weaver and Ben Mendelsohn and Naomi Watts, and it was huge, and we spent 4 years on it. And then the film studio got bought and they just trashed the whole thing. And years, just millions, $50 million, $40 million worth of work. And they just went, no, it's not, you know, we wouldn't have commissioned this, so tax write-off. And that was that.
There's nothing more depressing than small town USA, and small don't come much smaller than Punxsutawney on Groundhog Day.
At the same time, Groundhog Day, the musical, which had won Best Musical Award in the West End and went to Broadway, trailing critical success, had closed very quickly on Broadway for lots of reasons. And you know, I was acting in a Robin Hood movie, which subsequently flopped. And so it was this period where, having had all my dreams come true, I had this big, big reality check.
Well, I think the end of the movie in LA left Tim and Sarah feeling less affectionate about LA, but the move back to Australia was always on the cards.
It's an absolute privilege to be in the great sandpit of creativity, but there is treachery there, and there is loss there, and there's failure. It really hurts, and no one wants to hear about it.
Where are you up, right? That was a tough time only because he wasn't kicking goals every minute at that point. And so the mood was heavier. You needed to vent a lot of stuff.
Mm.
You know.
I don't like being fucked with.
You don't like being fucked with. Yeah, we learned that. We figured that out.
The kind of real pity of it is it just broke something in my Pollyanna-ish attitude. And I think it's permanent. You know, I just feel like I'm a little bit more cynical about stuff, which is a pity.
It's just what happens, and probably good to have a bit of a knockback, a bit of a big knockback, you know, to help see you through.
Yeah.
Bit like dumping you.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Just
right.
like,
I needed
okay,
to be
you need a bit of
dumped again.
heartbreak so that you can learn some of that end of the, spectrum of things to learn.
Let's go from the beginning of the song and work forwards now.
Yeah.
Get a couple of takes of the first verse and B section.
You change after those sorts of experiences.
It looks good.
And I have done things differently since.
I'm very happy with that.
So I took back control of my work, and I was very, very blessed to be able to come back to Australia with the reputation I now have and be given an opportunity to write upright and to be allowed to be the sort of key creative in that process. Upright is a thing about what we do with our scars and our bumps and our bruises. The piano is a metaphor for something that's out of tune and hacked up, but it's individual and it's beautiful in its own way.
What do you want me to play?
Something appropriate.
All these ideas, all my angst went into that show. So that was amazing.
My humps, my humps, my humps, my humps, my little camel. Too soon?
A bit.
Tim always wanted to be an actor. That was his dream. The comedy, the music, all the rest was a distraction and a kind of an accident. So for him to be in this position now where he can create work that he can be in and be a part of is probably exactly where he wants to be.
It's just completely bonkers at the moment. I'm trying to deliver the pitch document for my new TV show whilst preparing for my Opera House Steps gig on the 12th of November, and on the 21st of November, Upright comes out, and on the 23rd of November, my back show goes to cinemas in the UK, and on the 25th of November, Matilda comes out in cinemas in the UK, and then I fly to New York to promote Matilda the movie in America, and there's a bunch of other shit as well going on. Do I go here?
Tim always had something to prove that, that he wasn't just a comedian, that he wasn't just a musician. He's just kind of a polymath artist. It's a lot of different things rolled into one. And that's really kind of important to him.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
I basically just didn't want to be known as one thing because I don't want to just do one thing.
And here to perform the aeroplane from season 2, please welcome the supremely talented star of the show, Tim Minchin.
Tim still performs these big live shows, but that character that he created, the self-deprecating wannabe rock star, no longer exists.
What should I wear? A suit?
What should you wear? What are you comfortable in?
Tracking?
We're perfect.
So he can't play that character authentically because he's too high status for that now. So I think Tim's much more himself on stage now.
I think he has a ball in life. I think he has a ball being a parent and a partner and an artist.
Time machine.
The fact he's not a wanker is because he can talk about the trappings of being a wanker. I mean, his real great sins are cheese, wine, and occasional flirting, as far as I can tell.
I'm proud of my marriage and my family, and I'm proud of how boring I am, basically. I want to have a lovely, normal, hardworking, honest sort of version of what is actually just a bacchanalian, fantastic romp of a career, Boring Keith Richards, that's me. So